Welcome to Introduction to the Psychology of Polling. I'll be your professor, Kenneth Fernandez. You can use Canvas to reach me through the inbox, or you can directly email me at my ASU email address. Feel free to call me if you have urgent matters to deal with on my cell. My office number, typically that might be hard to reach me, but you can always leave a message which sends me a recording to my email. So again, contact me if you have any questions. A little bit about myself. Basically born and raised in California, but I now live in Las Vegas. Undergraduate degree, UC San Diego, master's and PhD, UC Riverside. Been teaching for a long time, mostly American politics, public policy, but a lot of methods, right? Public opinion research, survey methods, graduate research methods, undergraduate research methods. I've done a lot of survey research over my years, mail surveys, telephone surveys, online surveys. As a graduate student, I was a research assistant at the Center for Social Behavioral Science Research at UCR. Project manager for Survey Research Center, Cal State San Bernardino. It was known as the Institute of Applied Research and Policy Analysis, and then later on, director of the Elon University Poll. Most of my publications are associated with survey methods or public opinion research. Here's some more. Book monograph, book chapters, blah, blah, blah. Boring. I will make you read a couple of my boring articles. What is this course about? Well, in a broad sense, this course is about social science and social research, because whether you're psychology, political science, sociology, marketing, business, even the medical field, right? Survey research is a very important tool used by so many different fields to understand our world, right? And so in this course, we want to understand the challenges of observing and measuring human attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors using polling and survey research. Right? We want to explore the psychological and social and political factors that influence survey respondent behavior. We want to examine how polling may influence respondents, right, through a feedback effect or bandwagon effect. We want to see how it affects voters and their assessment of candidates. And we hope, I guess in a democracy, we hope that public opinion findings, polling, survey research will influence elected officials and other political elites, right? And even though this is not a methods course, right, we are going to play around with some different methods of analyzing survey data, right? Because I think it's hard to understand survey research unless you look at some survey data. For example, right, I ran across this a couple of years ago and said, why are people leaving their jobs? This is an interesting survey, right? Through Prudential's Pulse of America Worker Survey, right? We can imagine, right, that industry, management, business, political scientists, sociologists, psychologists might be interested in people's attitudes towards work. Work occupies a large proportion of our lives, right? And whether we're happy or satisfied with our careers or our jobs, right? Or if we're not, what do we do? Do people leave when they're unhappy with their job, or do they stay in an unhappy job because they're happy with the compensation, but they don't like the work, right? I find this kind of information useful. The question is, right, how valid and reliable? Are people honest when they ask, right? Some 24% of workers are planning to look for a new job, right, post-pandemic. Right? Are people willing to admit that they're looking for a job? Are they worried? Right? I think I like this, It's useful. It's intriguing. It inspired me to dig deeper and do more research on work, happiness, right? But the question is, right, where did this data come from? How did they collect it? Was it a telephone survey, online survey, mixed mode, right? How were the questions wording? I start to think, like, where did this data come from and how trustworthy, right? So let's talk a little bit about the organization of the course, right? Every week, a module will open up. I do not open up all the modules at one time. I know some faculty do that. Of my circle of colleagues, that is not typical, right? Doesn't mean that we're right, but that's how we do it, right? That's how many of my colleagues do it, right? Because this is such a short course, 7.5 weeks, you start handing in assignments late. That means you start the next assignment late and it cascades. So we got to nip that in the bud, right? You're going to be penalized for being late. I know life happens, right? But you need an incentive, right? I've been a student and I've been a professor for a long time. Without an incentive to get things in on time, the average individual, right, will not get it in on time, right? The carrot and the stick. And right, we are studying psychology and politics, right? Rational choice theory, other psychological theories. We know that this is true, right? So we have to have the carrot and the stick, right? The nice thing, no textbook that you need to purchase, right? Everything will be mostly published, peer-reviewed academic journal articles, a few book chapters, all available as PDF documents, and I will place them on Canvas so they're right there, but they're also all available at the ASU library, right, where you can download them. But since I've already looked at them, I already have all of them, I've placed them in Canvas, right? You will need to get SPSS. That's available free from ASU. You will need to download that to your computer. In some cases, if you have a laptop with no hard drive, like a Chromebook or let's say like an iPad, that would be impossible. ASU has solved that problem because they do have a virtual app where you can go through their webpage and use SPSS via their web portal, right? I have not used that. I strongly recommend downloading IBM SPSS to your computer, and it's very easy to do. I have a little video that helps show you what to do, and I have a very old computer. Boom, piece of cake. It doesn't matter if you have a Mac or a PC, that shouldn't be a problem. But if you happen to run into a problem where you cannot install it, you can run it through the ASU virtual app. If you prefer to use another statistical software program, you've been trained in SAS or STAT or R, that's acceptable, right? So if I'm asking you to run a regression, right, boom, you can run that in another program if you do not want to use SPSS. SPSS, I think it's almost indisputable, is the easiest software program for statistics out there, right? And it is the most popular, maybe not within a particular field or department, but out there, it is the most popular and wide used statistical program. There are some other programs that are catching up, right? The nice thing about R is that open source and it's free. Well, right now SPSS is free for you, but if you were out there unassociated with ASU, it would cost you quite a bit of money, right? But it's very easy to use, right? Every week we're going to have a discussion board. Even in Module 0, we have a discussion board. You just need to introduce yourself, right? It's an essential part of the online class, right? I did want to note something here, right? As you note, like the famous saying of professors is like, it's in the syllabus, it's in the syllabus. The problem with syllabi today is that because of university policies, we're sort of ordered to put a lot of stuff in there. So a syllabus can be kind of a behemoth to find information. Luckily, it's searchable, so you can find that information. But I'm never insulted when a student asks me like, hey, when is this due, or what's this? I'm never going to say, it's in the syllabus, because of university policy, the syllabus has become overwhelming. And when I was a student a long time ago, typically it was 2 pages, right? Now it's a little bit overwhelming, right? I do want to highlight some things, right, about this course and what's in the syllabus. That discussion questions are a little bit interesting in that Canvas can only show one deadline at a time, right? What you need to do is you need to post your response to this discussion question before midnight on Wednesday. That gives your fellow students an opportunity to respond, look, read, think about, and respond by Friday, right? Each module will contain some type of video or video lecture, usually a video lecture, a discussion question, a short writing assignment. Module 0 does not have a short writing assignment. A short technical assignment, usually SPSS or Question Pro. ASU, as I understand it, has moved from Qualtrics, which I'm familiar with, to Question Pro, which I've never used, but we're going to learn together, right? And perhaps some other miscellaneous material, right? Take a look at the syllabus for dates and other information. If anything is unclear, don't hesitate to contact me, right? So Module 0, boom. Got some required reading, even in Module 0, and some recommended reading assignments. Got a video lecture, the one that you're watching right now, a short technical assignment that's a piece of cake. Download SPSS, install it, examine. A very small GSS data set, which is easy to open and look at and do a quick little thing, because I know we really have a matter of days, right? Short discussion question where you just introduce yourself, and a no writing assignment. This is not a methods course, but we need to address survey methods a bit because this might be your first exposure. I did notice that there was a public opinion course in session A. I don't know what that covers, but probably some understanding of sampling and survey methods. We're not going to spend an enormous amount on survey methods. One of the assigned readings in this Module 0 is by Weisberg, talking about the strengths and weaknesses of survey methods, right? And then this approach of total survey error approach. Early in survey methods, we were always concerned about sort of sampling, right? And sampling error, also known as margin of error, right? We've now realized that surveys can be plagued from different types of sources of error rather than just sampling error, right? Measurement error, even post-survey error where we weight the data incorrectly or we analyze the data incorrectly. So I think this is a nice it's a book chapter from a survey methods textbook that I think covers a lot of the stuff that you need in pretty basic language, so that it's a nice introduction of the strengths and weaknesses of survey methods. Right? I will place some links on some old videos that I helped make when I was director at Elon Poll that covers some elements of survey research. This is really for a non-academic audience, so I don't think you're really going to find them of that interest, but just in case you're like, I know nothing about survey methods, I know nothing, I don't know what weighting is, I don't know what is this, right? That these are short little videos that could help. I'll place those links, but really I think probably take a look at them, see if they're something of interest, but they are designed for the non-academic community. You're now part of the academic community. You know more than the average individual. Again, a couple of years ago, I read 28% of the adult population has a college degree. I think that's up to about 30%. Haven't looked at census data in a little while, right? So you're a bit different, than than the average person out there. But never hurts to review some material when you've been away from the topic for a while, right? Survey says it's hard to get a hold of people. And that is one of the number one issues concerning people doing survey research, just the declining response rate, right? It is just so difficult to get a hold of people. Pew is analyzing this, all this stuff, right? And one of the assigned articles that we have talks about why do people choose to answer surveys, right? It is, in a psychological analysis, right, there is a number of steps when people are deciding, right, to answer a survey from an organization and answer any particular question, right? And so we could model that, right? And then numerous stages where we could lose someone, right? Also, this article by Albom and Smith talks about the advantages and disadvantages of different modes, right? Which I think, again, is a nice introductory review of survey methods as well, right? Mail surveys are still done all the time because we have a really nice sample frame. The frame meaning list of potential subjects, where basically the post office has an updated, I'm sure if there's a brand new apartment complex, maybe the post office doesn't have that perfectly listed, but we basically have a very good list of where every physical residential address is. And you can obtain that, right, from U.S. Post Office or from different companies so that you can target geographic areas, right? That we know that there's an apartment here, maybe it's vacant, but probably someone lives there or will live there soon, right? So mail surveys are extremely popular still today. Obviously, internet surveys, right, are now the dominant. So take a look at that, right? Shows you different methods of surveying, reviews these methods and their strengths and weaknesses. I think these introductory readings are going to be very valuable. Some of this information you'll already know. I think some of it's going to be new to you or a nice review, right? When we're talking about why people respond, right, there's various theories, right, of responding to a survey, whether it's responding to a particular question or the survey at all, right? And it may deal with reward, cost, trust, right, self-perception, reciprocity. All these different theories are discussed in the readings, right? Another article, which I thought was quite interesting, that came out relatively recently, and I've read a number of articles very similar, talking about the shy respondent and the propensity to participate in surveys. And that has been a popular theory as to why surveys were so off in 2016. There was a theory where people just were answering surveys and they were planning on voting for Trump, but they lied. That has not found much empirical evidence. The theory that a proportion of Trump supporters didn't trust polls, no surprise given Donald Trump's attack on polls, even Fox News polls, that they were reluctant or shy about participating in surveys. That seems to hold water in a number of studies, including this one, right? So I thought that was kind of interesting and related to the political psychology of polling, right? Now, there is this belief that, all right, so-and-so, Bob, doesn't want to take a survey. Well, Bob thinks he's unique, but he's not that unique, right? So here I'm a Latino professor living in an urban area in the Southwest, right? Probably an easy guess as to who I will vote for. I'm a professor in the social sciences, right? Professors in the social sciences and humanities, on average, might at least lean Democrat. Not all. Chair in my department, Republican. A couple of my best friends are Republican. They're political science professors. They are in the minority, right? So if I'm not selected in a poll, it will not necessarily spoil the poll. Another person could fill in for me, perhaps any educated urban Latino living in the Southwest, right? I think I'm unique. I'm not that unique, right? Now, again, maybe only 2% of the population has a PhD. You don't have to find another PhD, right, to get me to have someone who has maybe liberal views or propensity to vote Democrat, right? And so we think that we're unique, right? But we're replaceable, right? If we don't get enough educated urban Latinos, they can also weight the data based on census estimates, right? But what if there are people out there that distrust the government, distrust the media, distrust surveys, but they vote and perhaps are attracted to an outsider candidate? Would there be enough of them to help explain why the 2016 and the 2020 polling was off, right? And so the authors of this study posit that non-response bias associated with the psychological or behavioral predisposition rather than a demographic or party affiliation helps explain why 2016 were off, right? Because many polling organizations waited on party, but what happened was they were able to get a correct proportion of Republicans that matched the voting population, but they got too many Republicans that said that they were undecided, or they were going to vote for Clinton or Biden, right? And the Republicans that were more strongly associated with Donald Trump were shy, right? So the data looked pretty good in that, like, hey, we got, correct proportion of Democrats, correct proportion of Republicans. And in 2016, they learned to wait on education. We have enough white, less educated people. But again, if those Republicans are more likely to vote for a different candidate, and the shy respondent that is likely to vote for for Donald Trump is not taking the surveys, then that could be the reason why 2016 and 2020 were so off, right? Now, when I first started reading this, I'm like, well, how do you survey shy respondents? Those respondents that don't take polls. Well, they make a good argument. That says, okay, right, we're not going to market this poll when we call people or an online panel. We're not going to market it as a political poll asking who you're going to vote for, right? We're going to market it as a slightly different survey, right? Under the assumption that shy respondents will be more likely to avoid political polls sponsored by the media, even Fox News, which was criticized by Donald Trump, or CNN, or political organization, or even in academic institutions, right? And they're going to pay more than the typical average online survey pays, right? Now, I'll also put a recommended reading, don't really need to read it, that just paying more doesn't always work. Typically, it's a good strategy, doesn't always work. And in fact, in a very well-established journal, there's an article, When Less is More in Boosting Survey Response Rate. There's other ways to encourage response just than paying them, right? Sometimes it can be a survey or a lotto or even a donation to a charity that can work even better sometimes, right? But I think they convinced me that they're more likely to get a shy Trump supporter or shy respondent with this type of survey. Not convinced completely, but it makes some sense, right? Whereas some shy people might shy away from political polls from certain organizations, right? Also, I'll put some other recommended readings if you love this material, right? One of my favorite ones is Where Have the Respondents Gone? Perhaps We Ate Them All. There's a couple other ones. Where the Respondents Gone? Did we eat them all? I love this article, and I'd always sort of understood this notion, but I hadn't put it in these words, right? But it relates to the common pool resource, right? And the tragedy of commons. We can imagine that respondents are this resource, and we would love to go and consume that resource and get their opinion. But if we do it too much, right, they are going to get burned out and they're going to stop answering surveys, all surveys. There was a point in time, because I did survey research, that if you asked me to do a survey, I took that survey. You called me up, right? I'm from that generation where we used to always answer the phone, right? Before call waiting, what have you. I have come to the point where I get so many invitations through text message, telephone, on my cell phone, even though dialing a cell phone has some restrictions when you're doing survey research, and emails that I just can't do it. I stopped doing that. But there was a point when I used to teach these classes, I go, I answer every survey that is sent to me. I can't do it. I would not do anything. I wouldn't be able to eat or bathe or anything, right? We've reached the tragedy of the commons. we are survey research has become so affordable, right, and so prominent that there are so many organizations out there that are doing it, media, political, academic, marketing, you name it, that we have reached this tragedy of the commons, right? That's problematic. That's problematic. I know at every institution I've been associated with, faculty will try to go to institutional research at the university and say, hey, I got a really cool research project. Let me survey the students. They always say no, because the university is always surveying students to say, hey, what do you think about the food? What do you think about courses? What are you happy here? What do you think about whatever, the library, right? They want to know if you're happy and what services you need to make your tuition money, right, most effective. Us professors, right, we think our research project is the number one priority in everyone's life, and everyone should believe that. And we go and say, let me sample the students. They always say no. Now, if you're part of a psychology department, you might create your own lab, which then recruits students from Psych 101 classes, where they earn extra credit or for research projects participate in these surveys lab. That's how psychology programs and other organizations have done it, because trust me, every faculty member I know has tried to say, hey, I got this really cool project. I'm just going to survey all the students on our university, and then I'll publish it, right? Too many professors have tried to do that. I'm confident ASU would turn you down. My institution, College of Southern Nevada, Elon University, would absolutely say no. And professors freak out. Wait, I'm a professor. I should be able to survey these students, right? Early on, universities understood this notion of the tragedy of the commons. And if you send out too many surveys to students, they're going to ignore them, right? And the university cares about their priorities more than just your individual research project, right? But again, psychology labs have sort of been able to recruit students on their own to participate in some survey experiments, right? So 2016, 2015 British elections, 2016 US elections, and even 2020, which was a bit better than 2016, were off, especially compared to 2008 and 2012. 2008 and 2012 were actually anomalies in that polling was so good, right? It was better than, the previous 10 years. But, right, 2016 and 2020 were anomalies in that the error was larger than it typically is, right? So we have this article by some big names in political science and survey research that look at election polling errors across time and space to see, has it gotten worse? Is polling, because of non-response bias, just gotten worse and worse and worse? And they look at not just the United States, but surveys around the world. And their answer is no. That yes, there's always been variation, different years. Sometimes the polling is way off. Sometimes it's really remarkably close, and somewhere in between. And what we've generally seen is that there isn't any clear trend now that we're in the internet age or the post-pandemic age that survey research is so bad, right? It really has remained remarkably stable, right? So again, someone who does survey research or used to do survey research or still analyze survey data, we're very sensitive to people saying, polling sucks, can't trust it, right? Tell that to the medical industry, the marketing industry, business industry, right? Really, you'll only find political pundits that might be running for office or maybe on some podcast or like, polling, it's a bunch of garbage. Well, while that pundit is saying that, every organization, every company, every industry is conducting survey research on customers, future customers, residents, citizens, you name it. And every, established candidate, right, that has any amount of money is doing polling. They're hiring a company and doing polling, right, because they want to know what issues matter and how they're doing and how they're tracking. Only political pundits are like, yeah, polling sucks, polling's obsolete, no use, right? You can get on TV on CNN or MSNBC or Fox News by saying that, or maybe if you're a political candidate like Donald Trump, you can get some traction. The rest of the industry is humming along, conducting survey research. Obviously, right, 2016 stands out as an anomaly, but we've had them before. The Literary Digest, right, had a remarkable streak of being able to predict which president was going to win until FDR, right? And that that poll going wrong, Landon by a landslide, right? They predicted. We're not going to get into the methods there. You can look it up on the internet, how they mailed out their survey, mostly based on subscription information, also auto registration, if I remember correctly. But their sampling frame was completely biased towards a more wealthy population. And so, and that was basically the death of that digest. And the birth of Gallup, who basically, right, in 1936, went to all these different publishing companies that would publish the polling results from the Literary Digest and said, if you pay to use my polling data, right, if I'm not more accurate than the Literary Digest, I will give you your money back. Because he knew, right, because he specialized in statistics and sampling, right, in his graduate work, that he knew that the Literary Digest methodology and sampling frame was flawed. He knew he could do better, right? The Literary Digest was totally upset and said, no one has ever predicted that they're going to do better than us, right, without, ever conducting a poll, right? But Gallup makes his name for himself by doing much better in predicting who's going to win in 1936. And makes a big name for himself. But even Gallup, right, in the 1948 presidential election, predicts that Dewey would defeat Truman. So even Gallup, using all of his fancy statistical techniques, still blew it. He had stopped polling too far from the election date, right? And he had sworn never to do that again, right? Obviously, the poll that is right up to election day, which is complicated given that we have early voting, is the most accurate typically, right? So clearly there's been examples in the present or the more recent time period and in the past. We still are conducting survey research. It's a remarkably important tool to understand our political, psychological, and social world, right? Also, as a recommended reading, I'm going to assign as a recommended reading information about online samples, because these are commonly used by academics and graduate students that are offered by MTurk, Qualtrics, Facebook, right? They have all different strengths and weaknesses, right? Typically, they are not a good representation of a population parameter, right? But they collect enough information that's diverse and with quota sampling and weighting that if you're testing a hypothesis, right, or doing an experimental treatment in political psychology, the results typically are very useful. And so you have typically some high internal validity, right? But when it comes to external validity and sort of predicting some external outcome, typically the external validity has some issues, right? So I think this is a relatively new article published in 2020 talking about 3 of some of the most common online panels available. There are other companies out there. I was just at the American Political Science Association and they had a couple of companies that were providing, I tried to, what's the cost of it? Typically $5 per person in their online panel. So if you want 1,000, that's $5,000, right? But, right, you could lower that in certain circumstances, right? Lots of different competition out there, which is good for academics interested in political, psychological experiments, right? If you want to predict who's going to win, MTurk, Qualtrics, Facebook are not going to have a lot of external validity to be able to predict a population parameter such as who is going to vote for who in a large United States election, right? All right, I know this is a long welcome video. I apologize. Contact me if you have any questions, right? I'm not showing up every Wednesday night to talk to a graduate class. I'm here at my computer waiting for you to submit material, for me to grade it, and to answer any questions that you have, right? And with modern technology, right, we can communicate by phone, or if you're having trouble with SPSS, we can use Zoom or any other, I often use Google Meet, whatever software, so you can show me your screen to show me whatever problem you're having. That's the wonder of modern technology. But you have to reach out if you need any assistance answering a particular question or any technical issues, right? I'll provide also some other material periodically if you have some interest, right? Here's some other recommended readings regarding response rate. Response rate, right, is such a major concern, right? In fact, I did a study and I titled the paper with a couple of co-authors, Polling the Pollsters. Number one issue, declining response rate, right? And we've seen some very smart people figure out statistical weighting methods, right, to help adjust for some of these issues. And we can compensate with larger sample sizes, right? Getting 1,000 respondents used to be a challenge. Now with online panels, not as much of a challenge. We can get large sample size with weighting. We can adjust for some of the problems in response rates. However, right, if there is a group that is refusing to respond to surveys and they are systematically different, right, like the shy Trump voter, that Republican is systematically different than other Republicans and they're not taking surveys, weighting and large sample sizes are not going to help. And so this issue, response rate, is a dominant question in the field of survey research and polling. All right, good luck. And again, contact me if you have any questions.